Welcome to another rockin' real life video lesson on powerful secrets to boost your English fluency. Today's video will be about how to sound more natural when speaking English and dramatically improve your vocabulary. If you haven't watched the first two videos, we highly recommend checking them out on the tabs above. In the first video, we discussed the 4 fundamental mistakes bad language learners make, which have little to do with studying grammar or memorizing verbs, and everything to do with having a strong purpose, taking responsibility for your learning, and connecting your English to your life and the things you love. We believe that English should not be a dry and boring school subject, but an inspiring and enriching lifestyle that expands your perspective on language, life, and the world. Being inspired to learn and make English a fun, natural, and convenient part of your daily life is the foundation for true, lifelong fluency. In the second video, we built upon this foundation with the next facet of our approach, which is to develop your listening skills and unblock your perception so that you can understand and tune into the way the natives really speak. Unfortunately, the great majority of English students at intermediate and advanced levels get completely stuck in their learning before ever arriving to the point where they can really understand natives, much less imitate them and speak correctly. We call this barrier the fluency gap. Although it represents a point of great proximity to your goal of true, lifelong fluency, it is often the most deceptive and frustrating phase of your journey. You are stuck in this fluency gap if you have learned a lot of English grammar and can understand most things you read, but still can't decipher native speakers without subtitles or transcripts. This can be quite frustrating and discouraging if you don't know what's holding you back. In addition to that, you don't know what you're missing. How incredible and enriching it is to be able to have fun learning English with TV shows and movies, learn more about the world with native speaking, online radio and podcasts, and news. The solution to this is not to study more grammar, and you don't need to travel to a native English-speaking country. What you do need to do is open your ears to how natives really speak, and then systematically remove the mechanical blocks in your listening comprehension which have accumulated through years of grammar training. Native speakers do speak fast sometimes, but that's not the real problem. The real problem is that we don't speak anything close to the grammatically conditioned way you learned in school. The truth is that we consistently cut, shrink, and link our words in what is called connected speech. This isn't just English, you do this in your language too. What makes English different is that it is a stress time language, which means that the rhythm and flow of the language has a predictable pattern that we can learn to deconstruct. If you'd like to learn more about this, we explored this in video 2. But before we move on to today's focus, let's deconstruct a quick example of native speaking connected speech and content and function word patterns. First with native pronunciation, and second we'll pronounce it more slowly and mechanically, pronouncing every syllable how most learners would expect us to speak. What'd you do with the clothes he had bought her? What'd you do with the clothes he had bought her? Did you understand? What did you do with the clothes he had bought her? Did you notice a big difference? What'd you do with the clothes he had bought her? Let's break it down by first identifying the content words and function words. Content words are stressed. They are nouns, adjectives, verbs, and question words. Function words are reduced. They are prepositions, auxiliary verbs, pronouns, and connectors. So the content words are what, clothes, and bought. Just a side note, in the word clothes, most native speakers don't actually pronounce the TH sound. This happens in the words months and strengths too. So let's read out loud again. One thing that works really well with my students is to take the reduced, connected speech part of the sentence and pronounce it as a completely different word. In this case, did you do with the becomes do with the. Clothes he had becomes clothes he had. And bought her becomes bought her. To learn these new sounds, it's important to disassociate your speaking from the spelling of the word. A lot of times learners can't pronounce words correctly because in their minds they've associated the spelling with their native pronunciation system and they don't see the word for what it is. A new sound with a new pronunciation system that doesn't follow the logic or grammar they've learned. Changing the spelling, imitating native speakers, and pronouncing the connected speech as chunks of words can short-circuit this conditioned script and open your mind and mouth to a new way of listening and speaking. This is just one example, but the English language is literally full of this. Unfortunately, the great majority of traditional schools do very little to remove these real and frustrated barriers between you and true lifelong fluency. Even worse, they sell you a false sense of confidence that if you study grammar and verb conjugations for a few days a week within the next 6 to 18 months without ever using English in your real life, you will somehow magically get fluent. Newsflash, they are lying to you. You may learn enough grammar to pass their tests and move from one level to the next, but after 2 to 5 years of mostly feeling bored and uninspired, they'll tell you that you need to pay a small fortune to do an exchange in an English-speaking country. You've just invested thousands of dollars to reach fluency, and you still don't understand natives or feel comfortable speaking, and now they're telling you to spend even more because you still can't communicate. Was it really worth your investment of time and money? Is there another way? There's nothing wrong with taking English classes and studying grammar, and it can be a big help if it complements a strong foundation of real-life experience, but you will need a lot more than grammar to be a fluent English speaker. Our goal is to show you the way. Now that we've explored the foundation of real-life English and what's blocking your listening, it's time to apply that newfound perception to your speaking and explore the power of colloquial language, idioms, and phrasal verbs. We'll also show you a vocabulary building technique that will dramatically improve your vocabulary in just a few minutes a day. Many people believe that learning and using colloquial language is a waste of time or even harmful to your English. But in reality, it's the exact opposite. Colloquial language is actually essential to achieving advanced levels of fluency and truly connecting to people beyond rigid grammar and formalities. We're not talking about bad words or vulgar expressions. We're talking about using language like native speakers and connecting to people on a personal level. This is how natives really speak. Think about your own language. Are you always using formal vocabulary? Or do you speak on different levels of formality depending on the situation, how close you are to that person, and many other unconscious factors? So, if you just want to learn business English and don't plan on really connecting to people on a more personal level or earning their trust, then go right ahead and ignore the use of colloquial English. You won't need it. But if you really want to learn how to do this, keep watching because we've got something that will knock your socks off.
Hey Justin, what does knock your socks off mean?
Knock your socks off means to impress someone a lot. Idioms can be one of the most fun and effective aspects of communication, but they can also be one of the most challenging too. In fact, when using idioms, all logic goes out the window.
Out the window? What you talking about, Willis?
To go out the window is an idiom we use to say that something is no longer relevant or that has been discarded. Even though idioms are confusing, frustrating for a learner, and even illogical, they represent one of the master keys to fluency. Not only do idioms evoke your imagination and make you visualize the scenario, they usually force you to think in English, as the majority of them don't translate directly. Most of them also have a deep cultural significance. Phrasal verbs. Based upon thousands of emails we've received from you guys, RealLife English community members, we've discovered that the biggest vocabulary obstacle is by far phrasal verbs. You come across them or encounter them in all your favorite TV shows and movies and music, and you've probably heard us explaining a lot of them in our podcast. They are everywhere, and just like colloquial language and idioms, they aren't always logical. One single verb can drastically change in meaning depending on the preposition or adverb that follows it. The verb take, for example, has 127 different meanings. We know this can be very confusing and difficult to learn, but today we have a huge solution for all three of these vocabulary challenges. We're going to introduce you to a tool that is going to exponentially increase your vocabulary learning ability and give you superpowers to remember these words, not just for a week or a few months, but permanently. Vocabulary building and the forgetting curve. Even if your perception and pronunciation of the English language are fantastic, you will not come close to fluent communication if you don't know enough words to understand what people are saying and formulate sentences. It's as simple as that. Today we're going to explore a scientifically validated vocabulary building technique that will give you vocabulary superpowers and the ability to take superhuman quantities of new words, including idioms, slang, and phrasal verbs, and systematically integrate them into your English vocabulary repertoire faster than you ever believed was possible. I know, it sounds almost too good to be true, but get ready to be wowed. This is going to knock your socks off. Before we introduce this amazing vocabulary learning tool, let's take a quick look at a revolutionary idea in cognitive psychology that will help you understand why learning new vocabulary is so frustrating, and also how this technique works, the science of remembering and forgetting. So this is the forgetting curve, proposed by German psychologist Hermann Ebbinghaus. This graph maps out the projected decline of memory retention over time according to the number of times you review newly learned information. Take a second to absorb and understand this because it's very important. So, applying this graph to vocabulary, if you learn 20 new words and expressions today and don't review them, represented by the first blue turquoise line, In 30 days, you will have forgotten 16 of them. That's a 20% retention rate. And in 60 days, 19 of those 20 will be gone from your memory. That's 95% forgotten, learned in vain, wasted time, wasted life energy, and back to the drawing board, or back where you started. Does this approach sound familiar? The learn it once and forget it approach is employed by traditional schools everywhere, and we all know from experience that it just doesn't work. Sure, it's great for short-term memory, and it can help you pass the test tomorrow, but do we really want to spend hours stressed out studying vocabulary only to forget 95% of it 2 months from now? We know how busy life is, and we know that the learn it once and forget it approach isn't a good investment of our money and, more importantly, our time. That's why when we discovered the vocabulary learning solution we're about to reveal, we couldn't stop using it and sharing it with our students and friends. It not only works for language learning, it works for memorizing any new information. As you can see with each subsequent line, with each quick review of the information, dispersed over systematically longer time intervals, the learner will experience a dramatically stronger memory and retention of the new information. With 4 or 5 quick reviews of the same information, it becomes a nearly permanent part of your memory. These same 20 words will be very difficult to forget, several months or even years later, and if the learner is exposed to these words on a regular basis in their real-life experience, they will be virtually impossible to forget. So what's the solution? Well, a few years ago, flashcards were the best solution. This is when you get some index cards, put the word in your native language on one side, or a picture, and the word you're learning on the other side, or a picture. You then alternate through the pile several times until you learn them. We've done this, and if you're persistent, methodical, and organized, it's very effective. But the problem is that it tends to get very disorganized and demands good planning, exact knowledge of the sequence of the forgetting curve, and a lot of time, effort, and note-taking to maximize its effect. Or maybe, because of some genius invention, you don't need to go through the trouble anymore. A few years ago, a revolutionary new vocabulary building technology called Anki was introduced to the market, and there has never been a more efficient and effective way to learn new vocabulary. It's completely free, and it combines all the science of the forgetting curve and the amazing effectiveness of flashcard training into one easy, simple, and powerful solution that will dramatically improve your vocabulary with just 5 minutes of practice per day. And remember, you can do this anywhere. You can learn more about Anki in our next video. But first, we have some very big and exciting news that we're so happy to share with you. We really enjoyed sharing some of our essential teachings with you. All the positive feedback we've gotten from you guys has been incredible, and we really want to thank you for all your support and inspiration. As we've talked a lot about this whole video series, our best teaching comes from understanding what you guys are going through, not from grammar books and not from being native speakers. We love watching you fall in love with English and making it a part of your life and who you are with convenient daily habits that improve not only your English but also your life. Anybody who has experienced this will tell you that this is a fundamentally more fun, effective, and enriching way to learn. But we don't stop there. The barriers to fluency go much deeper than that, and we know that you need more concrete solutions. Real Life Radio has been our lab for experimentation and has given us the chance to discover an entirely new level to our teaching, and more importantly, an entirely new potential for your learning. In the process, we've learned a ton about phonetics, connected speech, rhythm and flow, as well as dynamic vocabulary building techniques. We've also had the pleasure of connecting with you, our listeners, who have helped us recognize and build solutions to some of your biggest problems. In fact, earlier this year, we decided to test some of our ideas and create something that would teach connected speech in a way that's never been done before. We spent months planning, elaborating, and testing a dynamic new resource that will bring together many of the lessons that you learned in this video series. You guys gave us tons of wonderful feedback that helped us not only refine, develop, improve the effectiveness of these ideas, but also open our minds to the possibilities. We called this the Connected Speech Pronunciation Lesson, and it was a massive success. Unfortunately, we got really busy and needed to focus our time on other aspects of the project, including the Real Life Global Movement, which is a worldwide network of in-person language learning events. Because these lessons were so much more sophisticated and information-rich than a simple transcript, each episode ended up being 40 pages long and required around 25 hours to produce it. We just didn't have the time. But as the weeks and months went by, we received hundreds of emails from people telling us about the impact it was having on their English and asking us to bring these lessons back. By the way, thanks to everybody who wrote to us. You guys let us know that what we were doing was making an impact, and that motivated us to bring them back. Now we're excited to announce that the Real Life Radio Connected Speech Lessons are back. We've added some great features, It's better than ever, and we're going to launch it next week with an exclusive, limited time access to a monthly membership program. So, if you've identified with the ideas we've shared in this video series and you recognize your potential in them, we'd like to invite you to watch the next video, which will go even deeper and show you how you can best use Real Life Radio and our weekly Connected to Speech lesson to dramatically improve your English on every level. Let me warn you, this is not for everybody. It's very effective for those who use it diligently and enthusiastically, but it's not a quick fix or easy solution. It's for learners who already have a base, who are ready to make English a part of their lives, and above all, have fun with it. But then again, if you've watched this far, we're probably describing you. So, in the final video of this series, we're going to take these powerful lessons you've been learning with us and bring them together with the new and improved Real Life Radio Connected Speech Lessons, a revolutionary new resource that will serve not only as a transcript and guide to Real Life Radio, but also as an in-depth lesson teaching connected speech, pronunciation, as well as idioms, slang, and phrasal verbs. With this product, it's never been so easy to cut through the blocks in your listening comprehension, to understand and even use connected speech, and to systematically learn more vocabulary than you ever thought was possible, as we're now preparing Anki flashcards of all the new vocab to accompany the transcript. If you haven't listened to Real Life Radio or the Real Life Podcast, we would like to offer you the chance to start listening right now. There's a download button below with 33 episodes, so download them and put them on your MP3 or phone. That's over 15 hours of free audio learning material. Of course, none of these have the connected speech pronunciation lessons that we're offering, but if you haven't listened to Real Life Radio, this is a fantastic chance for you to get familiar with our work and the story of Real Life English. Thanks for watching, guys. It was really cool to present these lessons, and we're really looking forward to seeing you next week. Oh yeah.